All right, hello everybody. Like he just said, my name is Manfred, and I'm a security analyst and researcher at Independent Security Evaluators. And today we'll be talking about 20 years of MMORPG hacking. The title is Better Graphics and Same Exploits, because it really is true. It's been a pretty weird day. This talk is being modified to not include some undisclosed exploits. I was told, yeah. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. All right, disclaimer. I've been doing this for 20 years. How I've done it for so long without, running into any problems. I found over 100 O days in 22 plus online games. The key is to be ethical. Also be invisible, be Casper, the friendly hacking ghost. You don't want the game developers to know you're there, you don't want the players to know you're there. You're kind of just in there doing your own thing, kind of like, controlling the matrix. If you can, provide a service that fills a gap. That means you do it in a way that doesn't harm players. Don't disrupt game services. Don't do anything that will negatively impact a game company's bottom line. That's a pretty important one. Don't get root, don't own servers, and don't get unauthenticated access to online game services. But you can, however, you use built-in game features to find unintended features that the developers never, imagined that would be possible. And if you can provide a service that puts annoying bot farmers out of business, that's even better, because bot farmers suck. To be ethical has a little asterisk next to it. 17 years ago, I did some stuff I wasn't too proud of. Don't do that. We'll talk about it in the next coming slides. With that said, let's talk about hacking some online games. But first, let's talk about my name, Manfred. It's a pretty generic name. Yeah. I used to play Ultima Online back in pre-alpha, alpha, beta, and release back in 1997. I played on the Pacific Shard. Back in its golden age, you had free-for-all PvP, ganking, griefing. I mean, you kill somebody and you take all their shit, basically. It's the Wild West. So I did a lot of ganking and griefing in PvP, jacked a lot of people's stuff in game. So I picked a name that kind of fit the persona, and that name was Fuckchop. Spelled with a P, So one day, I went out, I was sitting AFK at the bank inside the game, and I went to AFK for like 20 minutes to go grab some like Krispy Kreme donuts, my typical lunch. I come back and I notice my name is different, and I look at the text message log, and there's like a GM talking to me. He's like, hey, we've had too many complaints of your griefing and ganking, plus we can't have you running around as Fuckchop. So he just picked a random name and named me Manfred. So I was named by a GM, ever since, that just stuck. We'll be talking about, I think, all of these games except two. We'll be talking about low-hanging fruit exploits. All the games in the previous slide had one thing in common, and that is they all suffered from integer overflow exploits. What's an integer overflow? It's basically when you perform an arithmetic operation and you basically either change signs, or you go from the maximum positive to 0, or you go from 0 to the maximum positive, and vice versa. It's a pretty simple concept. It happens a lot. Here's one in action in a debugger. So we'll load up EAX with 1, we'll load up EBX with the value of 2, and then we'll subtract EBX by 1. EBX changes into 1. We'll subtract another one from EBX. So EBX is 0, and we'll subtract from EBX one more time. And EBX turned into the maximum 32-bit integer value, which is 4 point something billion. And if you note E flags on the bottom right, the carry flag got set. So that's a really simple way to know if something overflowed or underflowed. If we go the other way, we'll load up EAX with the maximum int32 value, which is 4 point something billion, and then we'll add 1 to it. You know, you'd think you have 4.1 billion plus 1, but you go to 0. Not a good thing. It's pretty simple. I've seen a lot of people post on like Stack Overflow about how to test for overflows, and you know, they try to do like high-level tests, like if x is greater than x plus 1, then you know you have an overflow. Otherwise, you're fine. Compilers, you know, they'll look at x is greater than x plus 1, they'll be like, what the hell is this crap? So, you know, compilers will optimize that stuff out of there on this. Generally, they'll take it out. So here's an overly simplified, typical MMORPG architecture. You have your user that's interacting with a game client. The game client is processing UI events. It turns these UI events into messages that get sent to the server. So usually all these events funnel down into a single send data routine where it gets encrypted and then sent down the network to the game server. The game server does this backwards. It reads the data from the network. It has like a receive data routine where it decrypts the buffer, analyzes the packet, and takes appropriate actions, and then notifies the game client and any other clients in the vicinity. So when you're hacking online games, you basically want to do man-in-the-middle attacks. You want to take over the protocol and the messages that the client and server are sending to each other. Online games usually use proprietary and modified encryption, and sometimes they do like weird stuff where they'll use like Blowfish and triple DES on top of each other, and then they'll XOR everything, and then they'll add 5 to it, and then add a cherry on top or whatever. They try to obfuscate things so people don't look at their protocol. It's time-consuming to reverse. You may have to keep track of renegotiations mid-session, cipher changes mid-session, plus whatever they're doing probably and will change every patch cycle. Especially in Rift Online, they patch like every other day, which is really annoying. Also, online games usually insert anti-tampering junk into their packets, like an HMAC, some kind of a checksum. I've seen a lot of these games roll their own checksum, which makes things interesting. They'll do sequence numbers. They'll get fancy and do like per packet or per packet type sequence numbers. So movement packets will have different sequence numbers than speech packets or inventory interaction packets. On top of that, they obfuscate opcodes, basically the operation code that describes what the packet is going to be. They obfuscate data types like integers, strings, int32s, int64s, int16s, bytes, booleans. All of this is done in pre-encryption, and it's used to basically stop people from modifying the game in memory, like modifying packets in memory using like a simple hex viewer. So if you try to do a network man-in-the-middle approach, you're dealing with encrypted, compressed, checksummed, sequenced, and obfuscated packets, which is a lot of bullcrap. So how do you go about cleaning attack a game? You do an application layer man-in-the-middle. You inject a DLL. There's like 20 different ways to inject a DLL into a process, especially in Windows. So the game client has a send data routine. So you inject the DLL will hook the send data routine where you can roll your own custom send data routine where you can examine packets and modify packets as you see fit. And then you can get fancy and you can add a whole GUI to the thing. So you inject the DLL, you spin up a GUI, and the GUI basically spits out all the packets and has functionality for replaying a packet and modifying a packet in real time. And then you have some crazy hacker dude, which happens to be somebody we all know and love. So PowerPoint bulletins and diagrams and stuff is nice, but what does it look like in practice? It looks like a little line. Let's go back. No. All right. It shows up for like a split second. All right. Well, if I just keep doing that, you can get like... All right, hold on. Let me see if I can play it from the drive. We have some extra time since I won't be doing a live exploit because I was told that would be a dumb thing to do. All right, no video. Let's see. Try this guy. Yeah, where's VLC? Do we have QuickTime? Not yet. Man, this laptop's a piece of shit. What's going on here? No, hold on. Is the suspense killing you guys? Oh wait, what do we have? Try what? Yeah, I'm trying to... why is it not going full screen? Full screen, Control F. Oh. Yeah, I'll have to explain what's going on. So this is an inject, well, on the upper right is a GUI that was spun up by an injected DLL that's plugged into Dark Age of Camelot. It's a really old game from 2001. And what I'm doing here is modifying speech packets. So I'm sending a text message with the null terminator removed. So I'm getting back server memory. I mean, this worked back in 2001, and I tested it like a few days ago, and it still works. So I guess it's not like a huge concern of theirs. Back when the game was popular, back in 2001, I could just sit here and like spit out packets after packets with the null terminator removed, and I could, listen on other people's conversations, see weird stuff that's going on in server memory, get all sorts of weird strings back. Let's see. All right, so let's go to Ultima Online. So we saw the tool I use. You saw that I can modify packets and do some stuff that normally shouldn't happen. So Ultima Online had non-instance housing. Games these days have instance housing, so pretty much anybody is guaranteed a house. Ultima Online had PvP, one of my favorite features, and it had tons of exploits. Like this exploit right here is, so normally the skills on the right, they're normally not supposed to go above 100 points. one day the developers decided to patch in poison into the game, like where you could poison people. And they had the bright idea, if you drink a poison potion, it'll reduce your stamina by like 10 points or 5 points, depending on the quality of the poison. So if you make a character with like 2 stamina and you drink some poison, it'll cause your stamina to roll down and become 65,65535. And there's a lot of skills that are based off of your stamina, like alchemy, blacksmithing, and carpentry and stuff like that. So when you have 65,000 stamina, you have some pretty awesome skills. So you can make some, so you can do some epic crafting and make some awesome, overly powered stuff. And this one didn't. You just use the game interface. You didn't even have to do anything wonky. Ultima Online had housing. If you see in the picture, this house is like new. We'll talk about that. They implemented a house decay system where it prevents, players that quit the game or lost interest in the game from having houses that take up valuable real estate in the game. There's multiple stages. There's like new, like in the picture, where a player interacted with it within an hour. There's slightly worn. That happens after a week. They're somewhat worn a week after that, fairly worn another week, greatly worn a week after that, and then it becomes in danger of collapsing. So after about 5 or 6 weeks, it becomes in danger of collapsing. And this is where it gets fun. Oh man, there's going to be another video after this. I hope it works. So when it goes to in danger of collapsing, they pick a random time of 5, 10, or 15 hours. So you don't really know exactly when it's going to collapse. So you can't set your alarm and be like, hey, somebody's house is going to fall down. I'm going to get some mad loot. Anyway, non-distance housing, just to make the point here, there's usually about 30,000 players per server in Ultima Online. But there's only about 3,000 spots for a house, so we have 27,000 homeless players that really want a house. Huge demand, and market forces take an effect where you have limited supply, high prices. All right, here's the video. Let's see if this works. This is a house that's in danger of collapsing. It's going to collapse in a few seconds if the video starts, and then you'll see craziness go down. Oh, hey, it works. So it's going to collapse any second now. You see all their loot just hit the ground, and everybody's basically, there's a riot going on. There's like people caging people in with like stone walls. It's kind of like mutually assured destruction with no. There's like dead bodies down here, dead horses. There's a ghost running around up there. Anyway, you get the point. Since there's huge housing demand and market forces are in play. This is a quote from Richard Garriott. He created Ultima Online and the Ultima series. Pretty interesting guy. He said that after the game launched, it wasn't unusual to see houses sell on eBay for $10,000. I mean, you could get a house in Mexico for that, which is which is probably nicer than a virtual house that might collapse one day and have a huge fight over it. Houses have features. You can transfer ownership of a house. You can change locks. You can demolish a house. And then you have unintended features, i.e. hacks. So to demolish a house, and this was fixed a long time ago in '99, all you had to do is have one house on the server. You open up the house menu, and you select demolish, and then you get like a confirmation screen, like, do you really want to do this? Not really, so you don't want to confirm, because you don't want to demolish your own house. So you send that Yeah. So you send a crafted packet with a house you want to demolish, and their house demolishes. So I took the screenshot because I'd run around at like 3 o'clock in the morning looking for houses that are in danger of collapsing. Because, I didn't want to delete somebody's house that was like new or that they were using it. So I was looking for houses that would normally collapse. I'd go around early in the morning. And in this case, I found a huge tower that was in danger of collapsing. So I was like, sweet. So I deleted the tower. I placed 3 small houses in place. And then this guy pops in. He's like, hey, where's my tower? And I'm over here in the purple shirt and purple pants. I'm like, I don't know what happened, man. So I'm kind of just sitting around and going, hey, how's this going to play out? This might be interesting. So after a few minutes, like all of his buddies show up and they're like, hey, where's the house? Like all my shit was in your house and now it's all gone. So then the GM pops in. The first thing they do is the GM is over here in the red robe. First thing they do is swarm the GM because they think the GM deleted their house. I'm like, oh, this isn't going very well. So I'm just watching. The GM's getting swamped. He's probably having a bad day. And then there's the guy up top. He knows what's up. He's like, either it was GMs or hackers. And there I am just sitting innocently. Yeah, so since I'm not doing the live demo, I have a few minutes to talk about what happens next. So in Ultima Online, I made a lot of friends with like the GMs and a lot of people that were counselors that helped out with the game. So I decided with my friend that we found some hacks and we were like, we'll help them out. Well, I mean, the game has so many bugs, we'll give them a few bugs that we really don't care about. Just as an act of good faith. And so we shared these exploits with him. The GM talked to us. We kind of developed a relationship where we'd share information with the GM. So we found an exploit where we could place houses underground, which had interesting consequences, because if you have a house underground and somebody walks on the land above it, they're invading your house. So you could kill them without repercussions. Right. So we disclosed this bug to a GM. The GM got fired because the company thought the GM was working with us, because they were like, how are these guys finding these bugs? They have to have inside information. So the GM gets fired. I get banned, my friend gets banned, a bunch of ours get banned. So we're like, all right, we tried to help you out, screw you guys. So we went around and deleted houses on like all servers that Ultima Online ran. We deleted about probably 500-600 houses. We knew it wouldn't be a bad thing because we know they have backups, but we did this Sunday night when nobody's working, so they'd come in and deal with a huge headache on Monday morning. So what they did is, they acknowledged there was a housing exploit, and they're going to roll back the servers. I mean, it was a minor inconvenience, but no harm, no foul, I guess. But, we moved on. We tried to be helpful, and they screwed us, so we were like, all right, we'll say our farewell. A lot of people do hacking for profit, which is a dangerous thing to do. When you do that, the first step is, reverse engineer the game, configure your tools, find an exploit, profit, fill player demand, do it in an ethical way, like we talked about during the disclosure. Once the exploit gets fixed, proceed to step 1 and find a new exploit. A lot of these games have multiple exploits. In my experience, there's usually 5 or 6 exploits that deal with increasing in-game currency or in-game items. There's also a gold rush period where when the game launches, there's a lot more players playing. Most of them are level 1. Being a level 1 player in an MMORPG kind of sucks. So they want in-game currency to boost up their character, so it makes the leveling process easier. Here's your typical level 1 MMO character fighting to survive. As you level up, it pretty much stays the same, but the crabs change color. So yeah, virtual currency is a valid business model. There's huge consumer demand. There's a lot of farming going on, especially in China where wages are pretty low. In 2005, they were estimating that there's 100,000 full-time Chinese gold farmers. In 2009, they were expecting, close to 1 million. In 2009, the farming market, the underground farming market, was estimated to be $2 billion US. So who are the main players in farming and hacking for profit? You have casual hackers. You have professional hackers, who knows how many there are. And then you have nation states. North Korea was caught using a team of hackers to infiltrate Lineage Online in South Korea. They caught 30 hackers that made $6 million over 2 years. They were busted and, I guess, sent back to North Korea. Yeah, that guy. So the second game I was involved in and hacked was The Arcade of Camelot. Usually in online games, characters are saved every few minutes, never in real time because that would be too much stress on the database. So they usually save them, I think in The Arcade of Camelot, they were saved every 5 minutes and always when you log out. So when you log out, there's a sequence of packets that happens. One of them is a B801 packet. If you send that packet while you're in game and not doing the logout sequence, you disassociate your session with the instance of your character. So the game doesn't think you're logged in even though your character is logged in. So you can log in again and get a fresh copy of your character from the database. So here's me logged in twice. And what you can do with this is load up your inventory, wait for a save to happen, dump your inventory on a friend or in the bank, and do the B801 packet where you can log in again and you have all the items that were previously saved. So you can duplicate the entire inventory of your character, including your gold. This exploit worked up until 2010, I believe. I mean, doesn't surprise me since they have that weird null terminating string that's disclosing server memory. Anarchy Online is next. You can see I have 65,000 strength, agility, stamina, and intelligence. This was another integer overflow bug that lets you get away with crazy things. Asheron's Call 2, I only spent like a month on that. I had a pretty lame bug. It was an instance crash by moving. So you have your inventory, and if you move something to an invalid inventory slot, like slay slot -1, the game server instance you're on would crash. So what you do is you hand off all your stuff to your friend logs out, and then you crash the instance that you're on, and then you log in again with all your items, so you duplicate whatever you want. Shadowbane, it's a long story, but I'll keep it brief. Shadowbane developer said, should we do an alpha? Should we do a beta? And somebody said, fuck it, let's do it live. pretty much anything that was a packet in Shadowbane had 2 exploits attached to it. So it was like an exponential curve of exploits, and like you could chain the exploits and basically create your own game. You could like open up and loot other players' bank accounts. My favorite thing was I was watching the incoming packets, and I noticed that the opcodes for stuff coming to the client were the same as the ones going to the server. So I was like, what would happen if the server notified you that you gained some experience? What would happen if you sent that to the server from the client? Well, it turns out you get massive, quick leveling. So here I'm just spamming in experience gain packets to the server, and it's just leveling me up. Each time you level, it like puts up a cone of light above your head, and yeah, it was pretty interesting to watch. So I got like 122 levels within a few seconds, which you'd think would flag somewhere, but they never banned me for that one. Lineage 2. So Lineage 2, you could interact with a vendor. You could buy items. When you buy items, you send an opcode, an item type, an item list slot that the vendor was displaying it in, and the item price. You could change the item type to buy any item in-game for whatever price you wanted. Even the stuff that wasn't supposed to be published in game, like GM equipment, GM armor, and stuff like that. Same thing for selling. You could sell a stick and say it was like a level 50 epic sword. And, you get massive gold for a stick. Final Fantasy Online is an interesting one. Anywhere they dealt with integers, you could overflow them. So there were exploits in player trading, splitting stacks, auction house purchases, vendor sales. There were about 6 or 7. World of Warcraft. So World of Warcraft had talent trees. So as you leveled up, you could boost yourself in certain aspects of your class. One exploit I kind of found by accident. I was just trying to figure out how the talent trees worked, and then I noticed something weird going on. I could increase my talents beyond the maximum allowed value. Normally, you're supposed to have like 5 out of 5 points maximum. I found a way to increase that to like 15 out of 5. So you triple the effect. So you could create insanely powerful characters in World of Warcraft. Like, for instance, of Call of Thunder, you could boost your critical strike chance to 18% instead of a legit 6. Where's the second packet? Oh, that's weird. Anyway, so to be honest, I don't remember exactly how this worked. This was like 11 years ago. But basically, you sent a talent increase packet, and then you follow it up with the lower nibble being filled with once, which is 0F. And then that would max out whatever skill you're targeting. So I hooked up my friends with this exploit, and we were running Molten Core. I think Molten Core is a 20 or 40-person dungeon, and we were doing it with 8 people. This worked for like a year until we kind of got overzealous and started taking it to PvP and like killing people in one hit and stuff like that. The players and the GMs didn't take too kindly on that, so like a bunch of us got banned, which is pretty typical. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. It's like you play a game, you find the same exploits, you get banned, and then you just move on to the next game. So Lord of the Rings Online, it was similar to Lineage 2, where you could sell any item to a vendor and say it's something else. So you could sell a rock to a vendor and say it's a diamond and make mass profit. Rift Online. Rift Online gets a gold star for their anti-reverse engineering technology. They would patch bi-weekly usually, like twice a week. They would modify the layout of their functions. So if you had like an area that you're interested in and they patched, suddenly that area is in a totally different part of the program. So you kind of got to start all over. Each packet was pre-obfuscated before it went to encryption. And this obfuscation happened in a different thread. So you have a packet that gets its opcode encrypted or obfuscated. Any data types that are in that packet get obfuscated in different threads, and then it gets sent to encryption. So to find a good spot to hook into Rift where you can view all the packets, you'd have to track down, the routines for all 300 packets, and then hook them all, which is not really realistic. But they did make one mistake. They didn't inline their obfuscation routines. So any obfuscation they did came in through a common point. So doing some tricky, hacky stuff by hooking the obfuscation routines, you could rebuild the entire packet and then have your way with it. Like Final Fantasy Online, everything that Rift did with an integer had an overflow bug in it. Trading, banking, inventory, and vendors. Here's an example of, so it says 0 silver withdrawn from the guild bank, but then it says you received 400 platinum. What I did is I told the game to give me negative 400 platinum. So the message says 0 silver withdrawn because it didn't know how to display negative 400, I guess. And then it just gave me 400 platinum. It's like, why not? Age of Conan, this one was interesting. There was a trade window exploit. So if you're playing with, or trading with another player, you could give him an item. And so let's say you give him like an awesome sword and you put it into slot 1 of the trade window. And then you could send a packet to put that same sword into slot 2 of their trade window. So they would see 2 swords that are linked to 1 sword in your inventory. So you could load up somebody's inventory, the trade window with a bunch of epic swords, even though you only have 1. And when the other player accepts it, they get all the swords you promised to give him, even though you only had 1. So that was a way of duplicating any item in Age of Conan. Darkfall, Unholy Walls. They had an interesting client. It was made in Java. It took like 3 minutes to load. I didn't like that game. Anyway, but there was a vendor exploit in that one. This wasn't an integer overflow. It was more of a logic error. So when you sell to a vendor, you send the operation type, the vendor ID, the number of items you're selling, because you can sell items in bulk or batches. And then you do a list of items followed by a null item. So kind of like Age of Conan, you could sell the same item as many times as you wanted. And I think the maximum packet size was 16,000 bytes. And the item ID was about 8 bytes, so you could sell the same item a few thousand times. Star Wars: The Old Republic Online. This was one of my favorites because this was super easy. You could delete items from your inventory. So it would look like an opcode, the inventory slot you're deleting from, and the number of items to delete. So no surprise that you could say, I want to delete -1 item. So the game goes to subtract -1 from your item, and then you subtract a negative with a negative, and then you get positive. So you increase whatever you have by any amount you wish. Let's see. So Guild Wars 2 had 2 auction house exploits. One of them was an integer overflow, where you can buy stuff for free. However, when you're buying stuff for free, the player that listed these items would get the full amount of the transaction amount. So if they were selling something for 10,000 gold, you glitch the game to buy it for free. The other player would get 10,000 gold. And also, the second exploit, there was an oddity when buying multiple items. You could buy one item legit, and the rest of the items you could buy for a single copper. Again, the player selling these items would get the full amount. I'll skip over that. Actually, no, I won't. So when doing the overflow exploit to buy stuff for free, you basically, it was a web interface. You basically send the number of items you want to buy and the price you want to buy it for. If you notice, the price has a leading 0 on it, and that's pretty important for an interesting reason. The price for this exploit to work must have a leading 0. Server side, it's treated as an octal encoding. Typically, in Guild Wars 2, you're not allowed to bid for more than 10,000 gold, I think. But if you encode it as an octal, you can bid as much as you want. So if you bid for that much, it's 1/4 of the max in 64-bit value. So if you buy 4 items, the price comes out to be 4 copper because you overflow a 64-bit register. The second exploit is, so it's a little messy, but here's the gist of it. Essentially, there's a feature where you can buy multiple items in multiple price ranges. So you can buy a hat for 5 copper, a hat for 6 copper, a hat for 7 copper, and a hat for 8 copper. But what if you told the server that you want to buy a hat for 5 copper, and the other 3 hats you want to buy for 1 copper? Well, it works. I'm not sure if I should show the video. Oh, it's because it got moved to the memory stick. Hold on, I got this. All right, so this is the second exploit in action where you're buying one item legit and you're buying the other items for a single copper. So what I'm doing is listing 4 items. I'm listing these items myself. I'm buying the first one legit, and I'm buying the other 3 for a single copper. But I get the full amount for all 4. So I'm generating like mass amounts of gold in just a few minutes. I think I create 15,000 gold in like 10 minutes just by automating this exploit, which is pretty cool if you want to, buy awesome items in game. Let's see, where were we? Elder Scrolls Online. I will not talk about that. Yeah. Close your eyes. ESO does have multiple integer overflows, I'll say that. And I will say that they use the same code base on PC, PS4, and Xbox, so the exploits in that game work on consoles too. And it's not video time. Oh, Final Fantasy XIV. So they use the same code base as Final Fantasy 11 before they put in the fixes. So they had Final Fantasy 11, they had all these exploits, they fixed all these exploits, and they launched a sequel which has all the same exploits again. Yeah. And also they had an exploit where you separate the stack into 2 separate pieces, and there was a integer overflow in that. It was basically an opcode, the source slot, the destination slot, and the quantity of items you want to split. And as you can see, if you overflow it, you can create 2 billion silencing potions or 2 billion or whatever you wanted. Yeah. So we were gonna do a live demo, but yeah. So, I mean, I could pass my hat around for a legal fund, and if we raise a couple $100,000, that, I mean, it's only 200 Bitcoins. I mean, you guys can spare some Bitcoins, right? But yeah, we'll stop here. Do you guys have any questions? Ooh. Oh, that's it. All right, thank you.